is brought to you by realestate.com.au, Australia's #1 address in property. With more properties for sale than anywhere else, we make it easier.
Welcome back. Let's take a look at what's happening in the property market this weekend. There'll be about 2,300 auctions. That's up 126% year on year. In Sydney, there'll be 775 auctions with another 150 auctions across New South Wales. In Melbourne, there'll be 842 auctions with another 30 auctions across Victoria. In Brisbane, there'll be 148 auctions with another 127 auctions across Queensland. In Adelaide, there'll be 134 auctions, and Canberra will have 81 auctions. The most viewed auction this week is 56 Walkers Road, Somerton Park in South Australia. It's a 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom home sitting on over 1,000 square metres. It's being billed as a luxury resort-style sanctuary and features underfloor heating, polished concrete flooring and a solar-heated pool. Next on the list is 8 Carmichael Street in Ivanhoe East, Victoria. It's an English-style home with 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. The home was built in 1939 by Sir Albert Victor Jennings, a successful property developer who built thousands of government dwellings across Australia. Price guide is between $1.8 and $1.95 million. Next on the list is 10 Blisbee Avenue, Brighton, also in Victoria. It's a modern 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom home with garage spaces for 2 vehicles. It features heated polished concrete floors, high ceilings, and of course it's got a pool. Has a price guide of between $4.2 and $4.5 million. Rounding out the list, we have 27 Wilkinson Street, Brunswick in Victoria. It's an older terrace house which has been renovated with contemporary finishes. Has a price guide of $750,000. Lastly, we have 102 James Mealham Drive, Kellyville in New South Wales. It's a 5-bedroom, 2-bathroom home with a price guide of $1.7 million. Well, this week's top listing is 32 Gloucester Drive, Deebing Heights in Queensland. Has 5 bedrooms, 7 bathrooms and a double garage, all sitting on about 2,500 square metres. Has all the features you would expect from a luxury property, including brand new high-end appliances, large walk-in wardrobes, gym space and of course a pool. The entrance hall features a grand spiral staircase. There's also a lift in case the residents don't feel like taking the stairs. Property also has the latest in smart home technology. That means the lights, the blinds, aircon and security system can all be controlled from a mobile phone. And there's no public price guide for this place. Well, let's bring in our next guest, Angus Moore, economist with REA Group. Angus, thanks for your time today. Let's start with the conditions right now for the property market. As we head into spring, what are you expecting?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ed. Heading into spring, things are warming up, and that's true of property markets as well. It's typically the seasonal peak across the year in property market activity, and so we'd expect to see that again this year. We'll start to see more auctions, we'll start to see more activity and more buyers active in the market.
Yeah, we've seen auction clearance rates are starting to pick up again. What do you think the main reasons are for that?
Yeah, that's right, Ed. We've started to see a bit more auction volume too over recent weeks, which probably mostly down to the fact that we're heading into the warmer months. In terms of clearance rates, we have seen them tick a bit higher over recent weeks. They're still well down compared to where they were earlier in the year, which is consistent with the broader tempering in selling conditions we've seen. But in terms of that pickup we've seen over the past month or so, I think there's probably 2 things that we've seen drive that. The first is we've probably seen some sellers revise their expectations a bit. Prices, particularly in Sydney and Melbourne, have been falling for a few months now, so we're probably seeing sellers move their reserve and expectations down a bit, and that's helping with what we're seeing in auction results. We have also started to see a bit more buyer demand compared to where we were a month or 6 weeks ago. It's not huge, but compared to that, we are up a little bit, and that's probably helping as well.
Where should buyers be looking this spring, and are there any trends you're seeing across any of Australia's main capital cities?
Yeah, it's a great question. Obviously every property market's different, every suburb's different, every house is different, so I can't unfortunately give advice to every single person in Australia, but there are some interesting trends that we're seeing kind of play out across the capital cities. One is that we're seeing prices in the more peripheral areas, the outer suburbs, hold up a little bit better than what we're seeing in the inner city. So if we look at Melbourne, prices in the west and prices in the southeast and Mornington Peninsula are still up over the year, whereas in the inner city they're down. In Sydney, we're seeing prices in the southwest hold up a bit better. In Adelaide, it's in the north. In Brisbane, it's out west towards Ipswich. So that seems to be pretty consistent across the cities. And relatedly, the second thing we're seeing is that buyer demand in these areas tends to be a bit higher. That's something we saw through the pandemic as people moved out of the inner city. They wanted more space, wanted some of those lifestyle things that, extra bedroom, living near the forest, living near the beach, that those outer suburbs could offer. That seems to be persisting this year. The last trend, which will come as welcome news for buyers, particularly in Sydney, Melbourne and Canberra, is that we're seeing just a bit more choice. And this one's not localised, kind of right across Sydney, right across Melbourne. There's just more listings on realestate.com.au this year than has been the case for much of the past couple of years.
So listings starting to pick up across a lot of Australia, but is there any of those state capitals where supply is a little bit tighter than the rest?
Yeah, there certainly is. It's been a real divergence between the kind of Sydney, Melbourne and Canberra, and to some extent Hobart, versus Adelaide and Brisbane over the past 6 months or so. So in Sydney and Melbourne and Canberra, we're back to kind of decade average for total listings listed on realestate.com.au, which means, it's not a plethora of choice for buyers, but it's certainly much better than it has been for the past couple of years. In Adelaide and Brisbane, things still remain pretty limited for buyers. In Adelaide, listings are down about a third compared to pre-pandemic. In Brisbane, they're down around a quarter. So still not as much to choose from there.
And what about the renovation and construction activity? What impact's that having right now on the property market across Australia?
Yeah, it's certainly been a busy couple years for the construction sector. Over the past 2 years, we've seen renovation activity pick up something like just shy of 20%, which in 2 years I think we can agree is pretty brisk growth. We've also seen a lot of new homes start construction, though at the moment we have a record pipeline of detached houses under construction. We haven't seen that many of them, relative to the pipeline, actually complete construction, which has been an interesting kind of trend over the past 12 to 18 months, in part because it's just been very hard to do construction work. Costs have been escalating. It's been difficult getting labour. When we have had labour, we've had lost days due to sickness. Weather's been a factor in particularly Brisbane and Sydney. So it's just taking longer to build those homes. One of the things that we're going to see in tension over the next, 12 to 18 months is the RBA is raising interest rates pretty briskly. Part of the reason they do that is to tamp down on construction activity. It is one of the most interest-sensitive parts of the economy. But we have this huge pipeline, and so I think construction activity is going to remain pretty brisk for some time yet.
And Angus, really quickly, we do have the cash rate decision coming up in a couple of weeks. So you're expecting the RBA to start tempering its rate hikes over the next few months?
You couldn't let me get away with that one, Ed. Look, I think we probably will start to see the pace slow. Whether they go 50 or 25 at the next meeting, I don't know that I have a strong view. I think they could go either way, but we will start to see them slow later in the year.
Well, Angus Moore, thank you for coming on the show today.
My pleasure, Ed. Thanks for having me.